and is being live streamed on Facebook Live due to accessibility issues with the malfunction of the elevator. The meeting is called as a result of the motion made on the 12th of January CAC meeting, tasking the CAO to determine if policy procedures had been followed in the investigation of 2 code of conduct complaints. This meeting is called to order. CAO Rice, could you please take the roll call?
All accounted for except Councillor Maxwell, who is absent today.
Thank you. You have before you the proposed agenda. There is one purpose to this meeting, and that is code of conduct. There will be no additions or deletions. Motion to accept the agenda, please. Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Since I am named in the matter under investigation, I will step down from the chair. Deputy Mayor Girard is also named and has also agreed to step down from the chair. If there is agreement from council, it is suggested that Councillor Savage assume the chair as the recent past deputy mayor.
So I will call for a motion to appoint Councillor Savage to chair the meeting this afternoon. All those in favor? Oh, you want the vote up there? Give Jennifer a chance to get the vote up there. Okay, so voting is now open. Thank you. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried.
Based on a motion from the January 13th, 2020 CAC meeting, directing the CAO to investigate whether policy statement G16 was applied to the 2 reports submitted on October 10th, 2019 and October 29th, 2019, and that the CAO report back to Council. CAO Rice, could you please provide your report to Council?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will read my report. I just would like to make it very clear again that my report is based on the process and how the process was followed only. No investigation is into the actions of the complaints. So at the January 2020 Council Advisory Committee meeting, Council discussed proposed breaches of the Council Code of Conduct policy. After the discussion, Council instructed the CAO to review the Code of Conduct policy to determine if the investigative process that is outlined in the code was followed. I reviewed 2 complaints filed by Councillor Maxwell to Mayor Snow on October 10th of 2019 against Councillor Andrew, and 1 complaint filed by Councillor Maxwell to Deputy Mayor Girard on October 29th, 2019 against Mayor Snow. Again, first, I will state that this report is a result of my review of the complaints as they pertain to the Code of Conduct policy process, and I also requested a legal opinion of the town solicitor, of which a portion of that opinion is the basis of my report. We did not review the actual allegations contained in the complaints themselves, except to the extent necessary to determine if the correct process was followed. Complaint 1 from Councillor Maxwell to Mayor Snow against Councillor Andrews, submitted October the 10th of 2019. This complaint was alleging a breach of the Code of Conduct policy by Councillor Andrew as a result of his Facebook post, and requests that Council consider the matter as a breach of Clause 4.6.9 of the policy. Upon review, the behavior did not occur at a council or council advisory committee meeting, so section 4.15 applies. The mayor did address the complaint with Councillor Andrew on October 15th, and it was within her power to determine that no further action was required. Based on my review of the code, in this instance, the proper process was followed. Complaint 2 from Councillor Maxwell to Mayor Snow against Councillor Andrew, submitted October 10th of 2019. This complaint alleges breach of the Code of Conduct policy by Councillor Andrew at the September 30th, 2019 council meeting. The nature of the complaint was the way in which Councillor Andrew made personal derogatory remarks to Councillor Maxwell at the meeting, and via Facebook posts, and the way in which Councillor Andrew departed the meeting. First, after reviewing an account from Mayor Snow regarding the personal derogatory remarks by Councillor Andrew to Councillor Maxwell, Mayor Snow believed that Councillor Andrew apologized to Councillor Maxwell from the back of council chambers as he was leaving the meeting. During my many reviews of the recorded September council meeting, I did not hear the apology, although it may not have been audible from that distance. It is my understanding that Councillor Andrew did apologize to Councillor Maxwell at the November NSFM conference where Councillor Pulsifer was present. Excuse me. And Councillor Maxwell accepted his apology. However, I understand that Mayor Snow did not follow up with Councillor Andrew or Councillor Maxwell regarding the apology because she was under the impression that the apology had taken place. Excuse me. After a review of the recorded October CAC meeting, Mayor Snow did raise the issue of Councillor Maxwell's letters, and although she did not offer CAC the opportunity to move the issue to a council meeting, there was a resolution to send the matter to council for consideration. Council chose to proceed to a special CAC meeting in January of 2020 to review the contents of the Code of Conduct policy, which appeared to satisfy the matter. While this could be perceived that the proper process was not followed for this part of Councillor Maxwell's complaint because it was not put on a council agenda, councillors did have the opportunity to address it through a recommendation to council, but chose not to. In my opinion, the policy process was followed in this circumstance. The second portion of Councillor Maxwell's complaint was with regards to the way that Councillor Andrew left the September 30th council meeting. Prior to Councillor Maxwell's complaint being received by Mayor Snow took immediate action by meeting with Councillor Andrew on October the 1st to address his departure from the meeting the previous evening. In my opinion, the complaint had already been addressed by Mayor Snow, so there was no need to address the issue again, and this resulted in the proper process being followed for this part of Councillor Maxwell's complaint. Complaint number 3 from Councillor Maxwell to Deputy Mayor Gerard against Mayor Snow, submitted October 29th of 2019. This complaint was brought to the CAO by Deputy Mayor Gerard and was accompanied by a written request signed by 5 councillors to call a special council meeting to address complaints brought forward by Councillor Maxwell against Mayor Snow. Deputy Mayor Gerard asked me if this complaint could be addressed at a special council meeting in camera. I informed him that there were no provisions in the Municipal Government Act that allowed this type of discussion to take place in camera, in which case he asked me not to take any action on the complaint until he got back to me. He stated that his instructions from the 5 councillors that were requesting the meeting was not to move the complaint forward unless it could be dealt with in camera. I did not receive any instructions to call a special council meeting to address a potential complaint, so therefore this complaint does not exist. Recommendations. During this process, it is evident that the Code of Conduct policy should be reviewed and amended to reflect the actual powers of council and the authority to address breaches of the policy. There are sections that are open to interpretation, sections that contradict other sections, and as well, the current processes for council dealing with complaints are difficult to implement. Council should not act as the investigative body when a complaint is received. Rather, the complaint should be referred to a third party. Council's decision to schedule a special CAC meeting to review the policy in its entirety is a very positive step to addressing and clarifying the intentions and processes to be followed by the Code of Conduct. Staff and legal counsel would be on hand and happy to assist and support council with this review. In conclusion, my report is in part based on a formal legal opinion I requested and received from the town solicitor. I would be happy to share the contents of this legal opinion with council. However, this would require council to move in camera to protect the legal contents of the submitted opinion. Respectfully submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Rice. We have received the report and the recommendations. How does council wish to proceed? We can make a motion to accept the report and the recommendations, or we can make a motion to receive the report and vote on the recommendations, or we can make a motion to receive the report and table recommendations until the next council meeting, which is held on March 30th, 2020. And of course, open for questions. Other than the three motions that I mentioned, if there are any other motions that somebody from council wishes to make? Okay, sorry. Is it the red one?
I'd like to,
I'm going to put you on. Yes, sir.
okay. I'd like to make a motion that we table your third option there to allow Councillor Maxwell, who is not present today, to have an opportunity to receive the recommendation, the report from CAO Rice.
So just to clarify, Councillor Pulsiver, it would be, you would make a motion to receive the report
Yes.
and table recommendations until the next council meeting,
yeah,
March 30th.
Next council meeting, yes.
Okay.
March
So
30th.
that is your motion?
Yes.
Second that. Any discussion? No? Okay. Then I'll call for the question.
Question?
Mm-hmm.
That council receive the report and that the recommendations be tabled to the next council meeting?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just interject?
Absolutely.
Madam Chair,
Mhm.
so are you also tabling any discussion? You're accepting the report and
Yes.
tabling discussion and recommendations to another meeting.
So
Yeah,
does anybody want to have any discussion on the report today around the table? Okay, just 1 second, John. Okay,
Just
ahead.
a short note. I think it's important to note that by and large, code of conduct complaints have been forwarded by councillors rather than the public over the last three and a half years, although there have been some public complaints. As a subject of these alleged allegations, violations rather, I'd remind council that I have invited fellow councillors to bring concerns directly to me, but some members prefer to appeal to the letter of the law rather than to deal with someone personally. I find that very unfortunate. In terms of personal derogatory comments, I know we're going to come back to this later. There was no personal derogatory comments. In fact, I did apologize because I felt it was personal, but derogatory would indicate something deeper, something vile, or something untrue. And in fact, what I said was absolutely true. And to state that again, we had a meeting that since we've determined is not an appropriate meeting for us to be having as council. So we were having an off the record, if you will, meeting of council. And as I said, in my departure from that meeting, Councillor Maxwell did depart from that meeting. The way I said it was not nice, but she did leave that meeting very emotionally and then refused to come out of the bathroom, and we had to put off that meeting until another time. So in terms of the exit, I wasn't happy with how I did it. I went home. My wife was said that wasn't cool how you did that, and I did apologize. And as noted, I did seek out Councillor Maxwell and had coffee, breakfast, or whatever at NSFM with Councillor Maxwell and Councillor Pulsifer. I thought we had a nice meeting. I came back very encouraged and actually met with Mayor Snow after that time and said, I feel like we're ready to move forward. The apology seemed to be understood and respected and received. And so I was extremely surprised to have this whole matter thrown back at me and in a public forum. I was actually a little bit, really caught off guard. I saw on the agenda that there was something in this regard, and I had no idea it was going to be just surfaced back around again. And of note, it's really interesting that members of this council, 3 members of this council, have forwarded complaints of code of conduct violations against me. We had probably one of the most disgraceful displays in this chamber recently. Maybe in provincial history within municipality. I thought it was disgusting. The disregard for the chamber and the disrespect for the mayor was terrible, and not one member of this council has brought forward a complaint, a code of conduct complaint. That's disgraceful. And so I would just say, if it's fill your boots. If it entertains you to try to make me look as though I'm just a divisive character in terms of the well-being of the town. When I did put a statement on, I think it's important to note that it was October 28th was the date. And maybe you don't know, but October 28th is actually Right to Know Day, Municipal Right to Know Day. And I think the theme was something, your council, your right to know. It is the council, this council has been elected to represent citizens of Kentville, and there are things that they didn't know. There are things that have been embarrassing to be part of, even a little on the disgusting side. So yeah, I put a statement there. I don't feel like I violated anything in that regard. What I apologize for was being personal. And I think what I described, it was the way I described the departure from another meeting by Councillor Maxwell, which brought that meeting to a halt when I referred to her as like a schoolgirl, I think was the term I used. That wasn't cool. And I apologize for that. And I still wish I'd said that differently. But every member of this council received an email from me preceding that meeting in which I said, if this becomes personal again, if I get attacked again, I will not stay. I will leave. So I preceded the meeting with an email to all of you saying, if this becomes just a personal attack, then I'm not going to stay for the meeting. So then to turn it around and act, oh, so surprised and aghast. We can't believe he left. You received a meeting that said I was going to leave if there was another personal attack. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. Any further discussion? Councillor Ballin, your light's on?
Yeah, I just think we should stay on any further discussion and revisit this as per the motion at council, and certainly any legal opinion is obviously in camera because Councillor Maxwell's not here. So, but we've at least received information and recommendation. Next steps we can talk about in a couple of weeks. Just my opinion.
So are you suggesting that we move in camera to discuss the legal opinion?
I think it
you
would be
wanted
better to let it wait. Otherwise, we'll be repeating ourselves in the month. So
Okay.
because of one of the complainants is not present. So in
Okay, sure.
fairness to that. So
Any further discussion on the motion? Oh, yes, certainly. Just 1 second.
If I might, just further to what the CAO had to say earlier, council has a report before it here today, and we need to be clear how you're moving forward from here. The reports sounds like it may be received, and I understood the motion be to table the recommendations. So at the future meeting, that's not a discussion about the recommendations. That's not a discussion about the report. It's a discussion about the recommendations. You have a special meeting here today. You set aside the afternoon in case you needed to discuss the report. It's not, I would suggest to you, not anticipated at the staff level. The 2 members of staff who are sitting here before you that this isn't, that you would have time at a regular council meeting to delve into the report if that's your intent. That's not the motion on the floor. The motion on the floor is you've received the report and you'll discuss the recommendations. The recommendations are about how to move forward, right, with respect to the policy, not the content of the report. So if you're looking to further the discussion about the report at a future meeting, then I would suggest that's a different decision.
And that's why I said to, when they were deferring recommendations and discussion. There's two items there.
Thank you. So before calling for the question, I'll after Solicitor Mattart's comments, Councillor Pulsiver, did you want to amend your motion in any way? Can you read the motion back? Sorry, Jennifer.
A motion that council receive the report and that the recommendations be tabled to the next council meeting.
Maybe
So
for discussion,
there-
recommendation?
I was just going to ask that question. Would there be discussion at that time, or is it just receiving the report? Would there be an opportunity for any further discussion?
I would think discussions about the
You need to
recommendations.
include it in your, be very specific in your motion as to what you want to discuss. Do you want to discuss the recommendations to move forward with the policy? Or do you want to have a discussion around my submitted report and then you would go in camera so that I could share the legal opinion that I received?
Well, I believe, Councillor Andrew has had a chance here to, speak on his behalf and his interpretation, how he feels.
Okay, so we'll
Yes, that's, yes, thank you, Councillor Andrew. I just felt that without Councillor Maxwell here, then therefore she would have not any opportunity to make the same kind of comments that Councillor Andrew has made here today. So I just wanted to, I felt she should have since she's not here, she should maybe have the same opportunity as Councillor Andrew has had today to.
okay, so Councillor Pulsiver, so do you want to read?
Could I jump in before
Sure.
you take
Yep,
that any
absolutely.
further?
Sure.
The just with respect to process on this report is strictly limited to process, and I hear what Councillor Andrew had to say earlier, but it had nothing to do with the process, and that's what you're here to talk about today.
Yes.
And so if Councillor Maxwell had similar comments, quite frankly, if I was the chair, I wouldn't let them be said because they're not relevant to the process.
Okay.
Who said what about whom when is irrelevant to the process. If there are discussions around the process that the CAO investigated, then those are the discussions. Perhaps nobody wants to discuss them because they may accept what the CAO has to say. You may find that it's straightforward and you don't have any questions about it. And it may be as simple as that, such that you can accept the report and move on today or in the future to talk about how you're going to move forward with this code of conduct. Clearly, the code of conduct has created problems for the town of Kentville in how you deal with it, how and whether you can enforce it the way people would like for it to be enforced, and those sorts of issues. But that's what the special meeting in January was to have been about, right? And so you still have a staff recommendation that you continue to try to, if you want to deal with the code of conduct, and I would suggest to you, if you ever want to try to apply it in another situation, then you should indeed want to deal with it. That would be a special meeting perhaps, and that you either decide today that you're going to have a special meeting to talk about the CAO's recommendation about the code of conduct itself, not about what's happened in the past to this point.
Mhm.
But you could today set that, ask staff to schedule that special meeting, and recognizing that the majority of council do want to deal with it. You said before you did, I'm assuming that you still do, and that you should simply schedule that special meeting. And if you do that, for example, then perhaps you need not table the recommendations to a further council meeting. Since you already made the decision, you just haven't had the meeting. Just trying to help you move this forward, folks.
Just a question for you then, Solicitor Matart. In terms of a motion to receive the report and table the recommendations, for the recommendations to be discussed at the next council meeting, if the content of the report or how CAO Rice came to her recommendations, that could then be done in camera.
If I may,
Sure.
if council is interested in looking at the legal opinion
Mhm.
that I used, that I requested and used as a basis and part of my report, then at this time you would move in camera. I would share that with council. Then you would move back into an open session. But again, as the solicitor has just said, this has nothing to do with the complaints that happened.
Mhm.
This is strictly the process, and my report, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, my instructions was the process. Had my instructions been to investigate the actual accusations, I probably would have not agreed to do that, because I wasn't here, I didn't witness anything, you know. But this is about whether the process itself, and as the solicitor said, you know, it doesn't matter. You can bring up what happened or what was said. That has no bearing on the information that you have received. And I guess your meetings are usually quite lengthy as it is. You know, and this may be the process where we look at more in depth at, you know, what the process is and how maybe we can stream it to work better for council in the future.
Thank you. So I'll go back to you, Councillor Pulsiver. Do you want to rescind your motion, amend your motion? You have a first and seconder. If you want to rescind it, you can, or you can amend it. And then if there's any further discussion after that, then there can be.
So if I amended the motion, I'm not sure about what the wording would be to amend the motion. It's either accept, receive, or table. Right?
I'll just jump in again.
I'm really at a
So-
loss for
so
words.
what you've got here is you've got a report from the CAO,
Right.
and that report provides the conclusions of her investigation.
As to the process.
She went on and gave you some recommendations. The recommendations aren't telling you anything you haven't heard before,
Mm-hmm.
right? You need to wrap your hands around this code and decide what you want to do with it, right? But so think of it as two parts. Her report, where she has said process was followed properly, okay? So what do you want to do with that? Are you prepared to complete your discussion on that here today? If you are, receive the report and then move on to the second bit, which is, do you want to do anything with the recommendations? You previously decided you did. Do you still want to, or are you going to schedule a special meeting to deal with that? Perhaps that will help you compartmentalize the two
Do they
aspects.
agree with my opinion as to whether the process is followed?
I move that we receive your report. I guess that would be different than the original
Yeah,
motion.
so maybe what you can do is just retract your motion.
All right, so I move to retract my original motion, which was,
Well, it won't take resolution. Nothing's been passed.
oh,
There's a mover and a seconder, and perhaps we can just clarify what the intent of the motion is.
That's
and
fine.
If the intent of the motion is just to receive the report, the seconder agrees with that. Then it's probably
So I
Yes.
do see, there's a couple of lights on, so is it okay if Councillor Pulsifer does her motion, gets a seconder, and then we'll put it out for discussion again?
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Pulsifer.
I move to receive the report.
Second.
Okay, so we have a first and seconder. Any discussion? Okay, so I see, yes, Mayor Snow's light on, which is Savage, because she's in that chair. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I was just going to make a recommendation perhaps to Councillor Pulsifer for the second part of her motion, but now that I believe she's going to do two motions, or are we receipt of report and recommendations, and which means that we accept the recommendations, or are we just receiving the report and then we're going to look at the recommendations, in which case I would suggest that perhaps we schedule a special meeting to deal with our code of conduct as we had planned to do in January.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say that I think moving forward, if we are going to schedule meetings to go over our code of conduct and the policies, I would like to, at some point, whether it's today or at a different meeting, go into the in-camera and find out the legal advice that CAO Rice was given, so we can use that information in moving forward with possible amending or redrafting of our code of conduct. Thank you.
Perhaps I'll defer to Solicitor Matart on responding to Deputy Mayor.
No issues with that.
No?
Or you can make a motion right now to go in camera.
So move to go in camera?
Should deal
Second.
with the motion that's on the floor first.
No, I realize that.
Just
If
to
we're
receive
accepting that motion. We've got one on the floor.
Yeah, I know. I know. Do you,
To receive the report. That's the motion
That's it.
now.
that's it, nothing
That's-
else.
That's,
Okay, so let's deal with that
right there.
first.
Yeah.
So I have a seconder for that,
You're
Yes.
second.
right? Question, all in favor? Sandra will have to switch. Voting is open. Voting is closed, and it's unanimous that we go into camera.
No,
Sorry.
receive the
Motion.
report.
Sorry,
Receive the
that we
report.
received the report. I'm sorry. I apologize, folks. It's Monday. Okay. So the motion is passed. So we have a second motion on the floor to go into camera from Mayor Snow. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bolland? Any discussion?
I already seconded, but
Oh, I
Previously.
apologize. Okay, okay, that's great. All in favor? We'll
Aye.
just, aye, okay. Motion carried. Okay, so we will retire into camera at 1:35. So I'll ask folks in chambers to wait outside.